Welcome back to the Comfort Food Series. Today, I'm going to show you how to make apple pie. So grab your best mate, Johnny Appleseed, and let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is start to make our pie crust. This pie crust is ultra flaky and super buttery and full of flavor. I have a full video on how to make this pie crust, so I'll leave a link in the description so you can go check that out. The only thing that we're going to do different is we're going to double this recipe. This way we get a top and a bottom pie crust, and we're also going to add some sugar to bring even more flavor. You can totally skip this step and buy pre-made pie crust, but it's really not that hard, so you should definitely try making it yourself. Now that we have our pie crust situation figured out, we're going to start to peel 3 pounds of apples. I chose to go with 3 pounds of some green apples, also known as Granny Smiths. I like the Granny Smith because they're fairly cheap and they have that sour and tart flavor to them, which will be the perfect counterbalance against the sweetness of our apple pie filling. You can use any apple of your choice. You can do all pink ladies or all galas, or you can do a combination of some Granny Smiths, some galas, and pink ladies. It's all up to you. Whatever type of apple or combination of apples you decide to use, you want to ensure that you completely peel all of your apples of the skin. The skins won't break down when we go to bake our apple pie, which in turn will create a tough texture after it's done baking. So ensure that you peel all the skins off so we get a nice, clean, smooth bite. Now that we have all of our apples peeled, we're going to cut them to start making our apple pie filling. You can cut these any which way you want. Find it easiest to cut cheeks like this. This way I leave the core behind. You can also use an apple core. It's really up to you. It doesn't matter as long as you're not getting the center of your apple or getting any of the seeds. Now that we have large segments of apple, we're going to start to cut our apples into slices just like they served in the lunchroom cafeteria back in the day. You can cut your slices as thick or as thin as you choose. Anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 inch works. In my opinion, the bigger the better, so I went with a 1/2 inch slice. This way the apple will hold up a little bit more when we go to bake it, and in the end it'll have a slight tender bite to it and it won't be completely mushy. And if you don't want to do the slices and you want to be extra bougie, you can cube up your apples. It's really up to you on how you decide to make this. Whatever you decide to do, ensure that you cut your apples to about the same size or as close to the same size. This way we get a nice uniform filling. After you get all of your apples cut, you're going to throw them in a large holding apparatus so we can move on to the next step. Now that we have all of our apples cut and in our large mixing bowl, we're going to start to add our sweet goodness to our bowl. The first thing we're going to add is 1/2 cup of packed light brown sugar. It helps if you break up the packed sugar. This way it's easier to mix with the rest of our ingredients and it'll be easier to coat our apples with. After we've added our brown sugar to our mixing bowl, we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1/4 teaspoon of fresh ground nutmeg. After we've added the nutmeg to our bowl, we're going to add the zest of 1 whole lemon to our bowl. The zest from our lemon will help bring some acid to the table, which will also help cut through the sweetness of our brown sugar and the rest of our goods. Now that we've added all of our dry ingredients to our apples, we're going to grab a rubber spatula and start to give it the good old mix up, and realize the spatula sucks and start to mix it up with your ball catchers. You want to give it a good thorough mix to help ensure that all of our apples are coated in our dry mixture, and realize that you have small baby hands and this bowl is too large, so you need to get a bigger bowl to give it the thorough mix. The process of combining the sugar and the apples and slightly agitating them and letting them set for a small amount of time is called macerating. So in turn, this means that the apples will start to release some of the natural sugars and juices that they hold. In the end, we should have apple juice / syrup in the bottom of our bowl. This is why we added the cornstarch, so we get a nice thick syrup. In the end, you want to ensure that all of your apples are covered in the cinnamon, sugar, and cornstarch mixture, so they should look something like this. The next thing we're going to add to our macerated apples is juice from 1/2 of a lemon. You want your apple pie to have more of a tart, acidic flavor, then you can add the juice from a whole lemon. And you want to ensure that you catch any of the lemon seeds, because you don't want to grow a little lemon tree in your little tummy, as they say when you were kids. That would happen. I don't know if it's true or not though. And if you're not a huge fan of lemon, you can also use apple cider vinegar or any other type of acid of your choice. And the last and final thing we're going to add to our large mixing bowl is 1 teaspoon of good vanilla extract. Now that we have everything added to our bowl, we're going to give it the quick stir together to ensure that everything everything gets coated in our vanilla extract and our lemon juice. After the quick stir, we're going to let it hang out on the countertop while we roll out our pie dough. This will help let the apples macerate even more and break down and release even more juices so we get that nice delicious syrup. I try to show you the syrup that was on the bottom of the bowl. It didn't really work out, but it'll be okay. Before we start playing around with our dough, we're going to preheat our oven to 375. Now that we got the oven going, you're going to bust out your dough and we're going to cut it into 2 pieces. This way we have a top crust and a bottom crust. The one piece that we're not going to use, you want to rewrap it and throw it back in the fridge. This way it'll keep the butter cold to ensure that we get that nice flaky and buttery crust. I'm not going to go into too much detail on how to roll out your pie dough, so feel free to reference the pie crust video. I go into great detail on how to roll it out, but in short, you want to ensure that you flour your work surface really well to help the pie dough from sticking. And you also want to flour your rolling pin to ensure that also doesn't stick. And just like we did in the pie crust video, we're going to roll our dough out to a 1/4 inch thickness and do our best to roll it into a circle. This way it'll fit into our pie pan. Give it the old test fit, and if it fits, then we're going to send it. After you've gotten the bottom crust rolled out and shaped and fitted to your pie pan, we're going to repeat the same exact process and roll out our top crust for our pie. Now that you have the top and bottom pie crust rolled out, we're going to start to fill our pan with our apples. You want to start on the edge of your pan first, and you want to lightly push your apples into the edge where the sides meet the bottom. This will help ensure that we don't end up with any gaps. If you were just to pour all of your apples in right away and not do this edge, then you'll end up with gaps. This will help prevent that from happening. Now that you've filled the edges of your pie with apple slices, now you can pour the rest of your apple pie filling into your pie pan. You want to ensure that you create an even layer with your apple pie filling. This way we get a nice even looking pie and we don't have something that's high on one side and low on the other side. Now that we have all of our pie filling in our pan, you're going to grab your top crust and throw it right on. I ended up making a mistake here, so don't make the same one I did. I ended up trimming off too much top crust and cutting it a bit short. You want to have a bit of overhang on your top crust. This way you can fold it underneath the bottom crust. This way you get a nice seal on your pie and you don't have a blowout like I did, which is really not that big of a deal, but if you're trying to win best in show, then it's not going to work. So cut bottom crust touch shorter and leave the top crust touch longer, and then rip off your top crust because you're a bonehead and totally forgot to add the macerated apple juices from our bowl. But you really don't want to forget this because it has a ton of flavor and it's going to bring a bunch of sugary goodness to our pie. Before we throw our top dough back on, we're going to dot our pie with 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter that has been cubed to 1/2 inch pieces. This will add a ton of fat and flavor to our pie. Now that we've added our macerated liquid and our butter, we're going to throw the lid back on top of our pie and start to fold the top underneath the bottom and start to crimp our edges. If you ended up making the same mistake I did, all you need to do is pinch the top crust and the bottom crust together really tight. This way it'll create the seal that we need. And once you have the seal created and everything's pinched together tightly, you're going to fold the dough underneath itself and into our pie pan so we get that nice sturdy and thick edge on our pie. This is the same exact method that we used in our pie crust video. Once you have everything pinched together and folded onto itself, you can create any edge of your choice. You can take a fork to make the edge seal, or you can make a fluted edge. Today we went with the fluted edge. You're going to take your thumb and index finger on one hand and slightly put it together to make a small gap. And you're going to take your other finger and push it through so we get that nice round edge. Now that you have the fluted edges created on your pie, you're going to grab a sharp paring knife and cut a few slits at the top of your pie crust. This will help release the steam that will come from our apples. When our apples are baking, they're going to release a bunch of liquid, which in turn will make the steam. These vent holes will help vent that out so we don't end up with a blowout. After you've created your vent holes for your pie, you're going to grab a small bowl, a large egg, and a small splash of water or milk, and you're going to whisk your face off to bring these 2 ingredients together to make an egg wash for our apple pie. Now that you've made your egg wash, you're going to grab a pastry brush, and you're going to get your Bob Ross on, and you're going to paint your entire pie with your egg wash. This will help our crust become nice and golden brown in the oven. After you've painted your pie with the egg wash, you're going to sprinkle on some granulated sugar to give it that nice aesthetic look and bring a little bit of sweetness to the table as well. After you've given your pie the fairy dust of granulated sugar, you're going to grab 2 pieces of tin foil and you're going to to cover up the side or the edge of your pie. This way we don't burn the fluted edges of our pie before the rest of it has become nice and golden brown and completely baked through. This method is called tinting, and you want to lightly push on your tinfoil. You don't want to Hulk smash and ruin the fluted edges that we worked so hard on. So ensure that all of the edge is covered up with your tinfoil all the way around. This is a bit tricky, so if you take a small part of your tinfoil and make a lip so it grabs onto your fluted edge, it should work a lot easier. Now that you have your pie tinted with tinfoil, you're going to grab it and throw it on a half sheet tray. We're going to throw it right in the oven. You're going to throw your pan on the middle rack of your oven, and it's best to throw your pie on a half sheet tray. This way it's easier to get in and out of the oven, and just in case if you do have a blowout, then the half sheet tray will catch that gooey goodness so it doesn't destroy and make a huge mess in your oven. We're going to set a timer and bake our apple pie for 1 full hour at 375. After our 1 hour timer has gone off, we're going to pull our pie out of the oven and we're going to take off our tinfoil and bake it for an additional 20 minutes. Taking the tinfoil off will help ensure that our fluted edges on our pie become nice and golden brown as well. You're going to bake your pie for an hour and 20 minutes total. You may need to go more or less time depending on how hot your oven runs and where you live. The best rule of thumb is to bake it until your pie crust is nice and golden brown. If you want to check the center of your pie, grab a long wooden skewer and poke your apples through the slit at the top of your pie to see if they're done or not. This is basically the same exact method you would do if you were checking boiled potatoes. After our timer has gone off, you're going to grab 2 oven mitts and pull your pie out of the oven so we can let it rest before we dig in. Now that our apple pie is done and out of the oven, we're going to let it rest on the counter for 3 to 4 hours or even up to overnight. You need to let it rest for a long period of time so it completely sets up. So when we go to cut it, the apple pie piece holds its shape and form and it's not a big gooey mess. This is the hardest part, the waiting. Now that our pie has rested, we're going to grab a nice sharp knife and cut ourselves a piece. So grab your favorite plate. You want to ensure that you cut all the way through your crust so that you get a nice looking piece and you don't ruin the rest of the pie. And grab your golden pie spatula and fight to get it out. This is why it's important to cut all the way through your crust so you don't do this. Now fish it out and plate it up. You can garnish it with some salted caramel or with some ice cream or eat it as is. It's really up to you. And don't be shy to get any of the apple pieces that are left behind in the bottom of your pie pan because you got to get it all. Dig in and enjoy. Alright, now that our apple pie is done, let's give it the old taste-a-roo. So looking at it, the crust on it came out nice and golden brown, looks super flaky, smells really cinnamony and apple-esque like an apple pie should. Yeah, and it came out looking really great. The apples stuck together really well. The edges, like the fluted edges on the pie, didn't stick very well, but nonetheless it looks like an apple pie. So yeah, let's give it a shot. This thing came out really great. The pie crust itself is nice and tender and buttery and flaky. And it has that nice toasted flavor because it got nice and golden brown in the oven. Then the apple pie filling itself came out really great as well. It's slightly sweet, but it's not too sweet. Then the lemon zest and lemon juice help cut through that sweetness and really brighten up the whole dish all the way around. Then the apples themselves bring a little bit of tartness to the table, which helps add another flavor profile to the pie. Then we get a little bit of faint hint of that vanilla to help bring even more flavor. Then apple and cinnamon, of course, go really great together. We already all know that. Overall, this thing came out really great. It's sure to win you one of those shiny blue ribbons at your next state fair. It might be a participation award, but don't worry, your mom will still be proud. Trust me. Alright, so that's it for this video. This recipe is fairly easy and it's pretty classic. And of course you gotta add the vanilla ice cream to make it a la mode or whatever it's called. I totally forgot to get it. Oh well. And you can intensify this recipe and make it more bougie by adding like 10,000 other spices like some allspice or clove or whatever else people add to it. Or you can keep it really simple and just do cinnamon. It's really up to you. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. Gotta go see who I can pawn this apple pie off on because I really don't want it. So we'll see you on the next one. Sweet. Sweet, bro. Is it filming you? Okay, This thing came out really great. The crust is nice and tender and buttery. And the apple filling. This thing came out super good. Super great. If I'm being completely honest, I really don't like me. If I'm being honest, I'm not really looking forward to trying this pie because I'm a huge on textures and cooked fruit is not one that I particularly like. I think cooked fruit is the devil's work, so I really gotta find somebody to take this pie off my hands because I don't want it to go to waste. So grab yourself a plate and let's do this. Looks like my lens has some schmutz on it. Schmutz. Schmutzy poo.